Mumbai was never quiet. The streets were filled with honking cars, shouting vendors, and the endless movement of people going somewhere. But inside my apartment, everything was still. I sat on my bed, staring at my phone screen, reading the message again. I cannot do this. I am sorry. That was it. No long explanation. No real reason. Just a few words that changed everything. For months, my life had been about one thing, my wedding. Every conversation, every plan, every decision had led to this moment. And now it was over before it even began. My mother paced the living room, whispering about what people would say. My father sat silently, staring at the wall, his disappointment filling the space between us. I should have cried. I should have felt something stronger. But all I felt was emptiness. I looked around my room, at the neatly packed wedding gifts, the colorful fabrics for the ceremonies that would never happen. My whole life had been planned, step by step, leading me to this point. But now that the path had disappeared, I realized something. I had never chosen it. I needed to leave. I did not know where, but I knew I could not stay.
That was when I saw it.
A small piece of paper, stuck between old books on my shelf. A train ticket to Jaipur. A trip I had planned long ago but never taken. I picked it up, running my fingers over the edges. The date was still valid. Something inside me shifted. A quiet voice, almost too soft to hear.
Go.
Before I could change my mind, I grabbed a small bag and threw in some clothes, my phone charger, and my wallet. My heart was racing, but my hands moved with certainty. As I reached the door, my mother called my name. I paused for a second, waiting for guilt to stop me. But nothing came. I stepped outside, into the noisy streets of Mumbai, where life continued as if nothing had happened. The air was warm, the smell of spices mixing with the smoke from passing rickshaws. I walked quickly, my fingers tightening around the train ticket. One step, then another, then another. By the time I reached the station, the sun was setting, covering the city in soft orange light. I had no plan, no idea what I was looking for. But for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to freedom. The train station was crowded, filled with travelers rushing in every direction. Voices blended into a constant hum, announcements echoed through the air, and vendors moved between passengers, selling snacks and tea. I stood still for a moment, holding my ticket tightly, feeling the weight of my decision. I had never traveled alone before. There had always been someone with me, family, friends, someone making the plans, guiding the way. Now, I was standing here with no plan, no destination except a city I barely knew. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The train to Jaipur was already waiting, its doors open. I found my seat by the window and placed my bag beside me. Outside, a family was saying goodbye, a mother fixing her son's collar, a father checking the bags. I watched them, feeling an unexpected mix of sadness and relief. The train started moving, slowly at first, then faster, leaving Mumbai behind. Buildings turned into open fields, the sound of the city fading into the steady rhythm of the train wheels. I leaned my head against the window, watching the changing landscape. After some time, the man sitting across from me spoke. He was older, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He asked if I was visiting Jaipur for the first time. I hesitated for a second before nodding. Yes, I said, it is my first time. He smiled. It is a beautiful city. You will love it. His words were simple, but they gave me a small sense of comfort. Maybe I would love it. Maybe this journey would not be a mistake. A vendor passed by, carrying a tray of chai. I bought a cup, wrapping my hands around the warmth. The familiar taste calmed me. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to let go of the thoughts spinning in my mind. Hours passed. The train made stops at small stations, people getting on and off, voices filling the air for a moment before fading again. The sky outside turned orange, then deep blue as night fell. I felt tired, but my mind would not rest. I reached into my bag, pulling out a small notebook I had packed without thinking. I opened it to a blank page and held the pen over the paper. What was I doing here? What was I hoping to find? I did not have the answers yet, but for the first time in a long time, I wanted to search for them. The train slowed as it approached Jaipur. The station lights flickered through the window, casting moving shadows across my seat. People began gathering their bags, stretching after the long journey. I took a deep breath, trying to push away the nervous energy in my chest. This was it. I was really here. Stepping onto the platform, I was met with a wave of sounds and smells. Vendors called out, selling samosas and chai. Families reunited with warm embraces. Travelers hurried past, their luggage rolling behind them. I stood still for a moment, adjusting to the chaos, then pulled my bag over my shoulder and walked toward the exit. Outside the station, rickshaws and taxis lined the street. I approached a driver and gave him the name of a small guest house I had found online earlier. He nodded and motioned for me to get in. The ride through Jaipur was a blur of colors and lights. The streets were alive with energy, markets filled with bright fabrics, temples glowing in the evening light, street vendors preparing fresh food. It was overwhelming but beautiful. When we arrived at the guest house, I paid the driver and stepped inside. The woman at the reception greeted me with a warm smile. She handed me a key and gave simple directions to my room. The room was small but comfortable. A wooden bed with a bright orange blanket, a window that let in the cool evening breeze, a small desk in the corner. I placed my bag on the chair and sat on the bed, exhaling slowly. The silence felt strange. I was used to the constant presence of my family, the never-ending conversations, the expectations that filled every space. Now there was only me. Hunger pulled me from my thoughts.
I had not eaten much all day.
Stepping outside, I walked through the narrow streets, drawn by the scent of spices. I found a small food stall where a man was frying something golden and crispy. I asked him what it was. Kachori, he said, smiling. You must try it. I nodded, and he handed me one, warm and fragrant. The first bite was a burst of flavors, spicy, sweet, crunchy. I smiled without thinking. A man sitting nearby noticed. First time in Jaipur, he asked. Yes, I said. Welcome, he said. This city has a way of surprising people. I did not know what surprises waited for me, but for the first time, I was ready to find out. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains, filling the room with golden light. I stretched, feeling the weight of exhaustion still in my body, but there was something else too, a quiet excitement. Today, I had no schedule, no responsibilities. I could go anywhere, do anything. The thought felt unfamiliar, but freeing. I stepped outside, the fresh air carrying the scent of spices and morning chai. The streets were already alive with movement. Shopkeepers opened their stores. Women in bright saris walked together, talking and laughing. A cycle rickshaw passed, its driver calling out for passengers. I decided to walk, letting my feet guide me, without a plan. The city unfolded before me in a mix of old and new. Ancient buildings stood beside modern cafes. Markets spilled onto the streets, bursting with colors, deep reds, rich golds, soft blues. I stopped at a small shop filled with jewelry, delicate earrings and bangles shining under the morning light. Behind the counter, an elderly woman arranged the display with careful hands. She looked up and smiled. You have a curious look in your eyes, she said. I hesitated, then smiled back. I am just exploring, I said. She nodded, picking up a silver necklace with a small pendant. Every traveler is searching for something, even if they do not know what it is yet. Her words stayed with me as I continued walking. Was I searching for something? I had left Mumbai without knowing exactly why, only knowing I needed to go. Maybe that was enough for now. A little further down the street, I noticed a man setting up a camera on a tripod. He adjusted the lens, then turned, noticing me watching. He smiled. "Do you like photography?" he asked. I shrugged. "I do not know much about it," I admitted. He gestured toward the camera. "Would you like to try?" Something in me hesitated. I was used to saying no, to staying within safe limits. But I was not that person anymore, was I? I stepped forward and took the camera in my hands. He guided me to look through the viewfinder. The world appeared different, sharper, more alive. I clicked the button, capturing a moment I had never noticed before. "Nice shot," he said, looking at the image. A small thrill ran through me. Maybe this was why I had come, to see things differently, to see myself differently. The next few days in Jaipur passed by quickly, each one filled with new experiences. I visited temples, walked through markets, and tried foods I had never heard of. The city seemed to offer endless surprises, and I began to notice small changes in myself. I was no longer the person I had been when I first arrived. I woke up early one morning, feeling more awake than I had in months. I grabbed my notebook, a habit I had started while traveling, and headed to a small cafe near the guest house. The air was cool, the streets calm before the rush of the day. I sat by the window, sipping a cup of chai as I opened the pages of my notebook. I wrote about the things I had seen, the people I had met. I wrote about how Jaipur felt different from Mumbai, how it felt like the world had slowed down here. A woman at the table next to mine glanced at me and smiled. I smiled back. She was holding a small book, reading quietly. "What are you writing?" she asked. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "I'm not sure yet," I said. "I think it's about finding myself." She nodded. "That is a good thing to find," she said. I looked at her, wondering what her story was. There was something in her eyes that seemed to understand. Later that day, as I walked through the streets again, I realized something important. The journey I had started was not just about the places I visited or the people I met. It was about what I was learning along the way. I had come to Jaipur to escape, to find something new. But in doing so, I had discovered parts of myself I had forgotten. I had learned that it was okay to let go of old plans, that it was okay to not have all the answers. As the sun began to set, I sat on a bench outside a temple, watching the colors of the sky change. I felt peaceful, more at ease with myself than I had in a long time. Now, I want to ask you, what is it that you are searching for? Is there something in your life that you need to let go of to make space for something new? Think about it. Ask yourself what truly makes you happy and take the first step toward it. I believe we all have the power to change our own paths, to shape our own stories. It is never too late to begin again, to explore and to grow. What will your next step be?